Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're going to give it just another minute or two before we get started to give everybody a chance to sign on to Zoom. But we're so glad to have you here for this great conversation. Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're going to give it just another minute. We'll be getting started with our content shortly. If you have any questions or technical concerns, please feel free to drop those in our chat. I'm here to help monitor them. We also have Morgan from my team who is here to monitor the chat, and we'll get you the help that you need.
Yeah, and it's more fun if you chat. I mean,
we love the chat.
As much as I love talking, you know, I'd look at other people do it too.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Hello, everybody. We're going to give it just another minute before we go ahead and get started with our content today. All right, everyone, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us today for this topic, marketing transparency. My name is Pam Torrey. I'm the Director of Marketing at Engage, and I will be your guide today. Just a few housekeeping things to keep in mind with Zoom. I know many of you are old hats at using Zoom for webinars, but today we do have our chat and Q&A functions live for all of our attendees. So if you have any questions that come up during the course of the conversation, please feel free to use those features to ask your questions. If you're having any technical issues, please use that chat feature. Morgan Vera from my team is on the line, and she'll be able to help you out with any technical issues or questions you might have in the chat. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into our content today. So today we are going to cover a few different topics after we meet our speakers, of course. So we'll be talking about, why customers don't trust contractors, what you need to do to build trust, and then why you need to build trust and what you need to do that. And then we'll do a quick wrap up at the end. Today's all about creating trust through transparency, through honesty, through being real with your customers. And I think at the end of this conversation, you're really going to have some tactical things that you can take away to add to your messaging or add to your marketing strategy to help you to take that trust building a step further with all of your customers. Who do we have on the line today? So we have me. I am your handy dandy host and guide here at Engage. We also have Justin and Mark with us, and I'll have them introduce themselves in just a minute along with their companies so you can learn a little bit more about what they do and why they are the experts here on this topic of marketing transparency. Just quickly, so you know who Engage is, we are the industry-leading presentation platform for home improvement and home services. So we help companies to be able to create engaging, interactive, dynamic presentations, quickly share them with those who need them, and then measure their results and impact through rich analytics. So that is a little bit about Engage. You're actually seeing Engage today here on this webinar. So Justin, I would love to hand off and introduce you and Hard Media Group.
Thank you. I am Justin Rankin. I am one of the founders and acting CMO at Hard Media Group. And one of our branches is Hard Service Solutions, which many of you in the service industry would know us as. And Hard Media Group is basically a social media and marketing solutions agency. Most of our business is focused in social media and what's being done as well as some Google and website-based things that help our efforts there. So our focus is to drive a lot of leads, a lot of brand awareness, and make sure that you guys are rounding everything off in your social media and overall marketing concepts. We do this nationwide from Los Angeles to New York, as well as a couple of clients in Europe. So we get to see a really vast market share and kind of are able to adjust to some of our client needs based on that fact. So one of the big things like we are seeing and we are hearing across the country is that where is the money being lost in your customer acquisition? So the way we like to see this is that you most often have three buckets, right? The first one is cost per lead. The second one is cost per appointment set. And the third one is cost per acquisition. And what happens in these processes is we have gaps between all three of these. So finding transparency in where the money is going is so critical, right? So let's say that you guys are running a great cost per lead. You have a campaign running, you're running at like $50, $60 cost per raw lead. Well, all of a sudden your cost per appointment set is $500, $600. Something went wrong in that gap, right? Something happened to cause that. Or let's say we stay on point and we're at $250 per appointment set, which is a pretty good average. And then our acquisition cost goes sky high. So what we need is to find transparency in our system to see where are we losing this money? Where is this money funneling out of our business so that we're not going from A to B to C in a smooth transition? So as you guys set your goals for customer acquisition, you need to set a customer cost per lead, a cost per appointment set, and an acquisition cost. That way, when you see the gaps and you see these transition issues, you know how to address them so that we know exactly what's happening from transparency from customer contact to close. So we also want to stay agile in our budgeting, right? So does your company that you're working with, or do you internally have a fee that's being charged on a percentage of your budget spent? So there's a lot of agencies out there that are doing this. It's from the beginning of time, they're charging a percentage of your budget. The only problem with that is if they're working only in Google and they're charging a percentage, they may be unlikely to tell you that you would be better off spending that with Facebook right now. Or maybe you could even move into some more traditional marketing forms, or maybe you should put in a bigger investment into your organic or SEO right now. So when you're paying a percentage of your spend, you have to make sure that those companies have your best interests at heart and keep that transparency there. And what happens if it really could have been utilized somewhere else? That's the big question you have to be asking yourself, is where is your budget going and why? Speed to lead, you guys have probably heard this a million times, right? And right now we see it more than ever. So speed to lead is so important, but there are critical things that are happening at this point, right? How fast should you be moving your budget, right? I would have told you to hold a budget in place for 6 weeks, 8 weeks at a time. We're moving budget weekly at this point, and we're analyzing things at such rapid rates because what's going on in the platforms. We don't have the time to waste. How often should we change your creative? You used to be able to write a good piece of creative out 4 weeks at a time as well. We're also seeing creative change out weekly, or we're using some optimized pieces of creative that will sub in, right? So we can allow the algorithm to do what it needs to do. We're pushing 5 titles, 5 pieces of creative, 5 different offers, and we're allowing them to work in together to help keep our speed to lead process there. And then what are your response times? If you're upset with your agency, or you're upset with your appointment setter, or you're upset with your guys closing, you really need to know what your response times are in each one of these facets. It kind of goes back to the 3 buckets that we talked about earlier, but speed to lead is everything, and the speed in which you're changing out your marketing opportunities as well. And here is the sad truth that we are all hiding from you. No, we're not hiding it, but reasonably, lead quality will never be the same as it was a couple years ago. And I would like to thank, Tim Cook and Apple for that problem. What they've done is they've protected privacy, and in that in the protection of that privacy, they have made it harder for companies like all that are sitting on this to use your information to reach your customer base, right? So what happens is lead quality goes down. It's not that big of a deal. We just have to comb through more leads. So we need to understand what those policy changes are and stay out in front of them. We need to know that even lead aggregates that you guys are buying these leads from are running into these issues as well. There's just no real clear-cut path around the issue right now. And with that being said, you may want to look into longer funnels. We were into longer funnels 3-4 years ago, and that's kind of come out because we wanted to go to the speed to lead. If we can use forms and platform, great, it's faster, it's an easier way to reach the customer. But if you guys are a smaller in-home service agency, you may want to look at using long form funneling again, because you don't have the resources to be making 1,000 calls, right? Even if your cost per lead is really low. So we need to have transparency on that side of things and understand that lead quality is never going to be the same as of right now, at least nothing on the horizon. So we have to find a way to combat that.
Great. Thanks, Justin, for that quick overview. I think just from hearing Justin, you can see why he's an expert on this topic and why he's here today. Mark, I would love to hear from you. Who is Snappy? What do you do? And how can you set us up for a great conversation here today?
Thanks, Pam. And Justin is super smart. And I think having your thumb on the, I guess it would be 2 fingers on the temperature. How do you take a pulse? I think it's 2 fingers, right? Having your fingers on the pulse of the industry is super important as you're trying to grow your business, especially digitally. And look, the reality is construction companies today are doing very well, right? It's a good time to be a construction business. Now, it's not without its drawbacks. And one of that is you're too busy, most likely. And look, a lot of the things that Justin had pointed to, digital marketing is getting more expensive. It can be difficult finding the right lead, right? So the strategies he's put in place to kind of target and get like lower your cost per lead and cost per acquisition and whatnot is brilliant. So Snappy is a solution to a lot of those problems as well. I mean, so it is think of it like a marketing hack, right? Instead of working harder, working smarter. Like, we invented pneumatic tools because it's more efficient than swinging a hammer with your hand. And so that's kind of the idea is, look, it is harder to find your ideal customer online because of privacy, but why not have them give you their information? Have them opt in and say, look, here I am. I want to do business with you. Like, that's what Snappy aims to do. It's like, hey, look, I need a bathroom remodeled. I need a new service panel. I might need some tile laid in my shower, right? At the end of the day, wouldn't it be cool if they're coming to you saying, hey, here's my job. Here's what I want to do. Here's my information. Here's the part of town I live in. Can we connect? So the first time that you engage with them, they've given you their data willingly. They're a willing participant, a warm lead. You know their budget and you know their job. And so that first conversation, I mean, you're off to the races. So look, Snappy, it utilizes this, and I want to go through these notes real quick. The win here is you spend less time doing busy work, because more often than not, you're busy. You've got a lot of leads coming in. Your workers are just working their tails off night and day, and you're probably working late to manage it, right? I mean, a lot of this comes down to proper management because the work's there, but how can you do the best work, increase your average deal value, and still maintain sanity and make it to your kid's soccer game, right? So that's the goal. Spend less time doing the busy work, reduce wasted time with tire kickers who are not really that interested in doing business with you. They're going to take a couple hours of your day and some gas money, which is not cheap. Close higher ticket clients through clever marketing and automation, as opposed to just brute force. Simplify your sales by pre-qualifying your leads before you even talk to them. And you can estimate jobs live on your website or in person, right? The next one. So I know what you're thinking. Okay, hold on. Wait, you said that last one's tough. Estimate jobs online. I can't do that. Fine. You know who is? Angie, Thumbtack, Home Advisor, multi-billion-dollar industries that are taking your leads, and then you have to rebuy them for $150 a pop as you compete with 7 other people for that same lead. It's crazy. This is what the consumers want. And they're asking for it, and they're willing to give all of their information to these companies so that they can just get an estimate, right? And just like Home Advisor, they're not giving hard quotes. They're not sending invoices. They're just saying, look, you need a new bathroom retiled. What do you need? Okay, cool. It's going to be between this and this price. Let's go. And then they sell you that lead. Well, put that on your own website. Just, common services. You think you show up to someone's door, you've got 5 to 6 questions that you're going to ask. Put those in a form. Let's associate some rough costs, some lows, some highs. And now, as people are sending referrals to their buddies, as you're in, your professional groups, as you're running digital marketing and people are engaging with your brand, the next step instead of calling you directly and going through that whole long process, because you're trying to get out the door and do your work, is, well, they qualify themselves. They answer the questions for you. And then you can give them cost ranges. Boom. They say, cool, interesting. Let's work together. And now when you reach out to them, there are pre-qualified. And people that you don't want to work with, that are saying no to reasonable prices, you didn't waste your time. So the goal here is to optimize the amount of time you spend dealing with your leads and finding the high ticket ideal customers that really make you sing. So look, I pretty much just already answered this one. So, I was just say see slide 1 and 2, but that's kind of the process. Like everything is tracked. It's awesome. So we can kind of get into the meat and potatoes.
Great. Well, thank you guys. So what we're going to do now is dive into our conversation today. Now that we know who the players are, why they're here, and how they have expertise in these topics. So the first question I want to ask is, I think you guys have covered this a little bit, but why don't customers trust contractors? We see consistently across reports, across anecdotal evidence, you always have that one neighbor who's like, I hated my contractor. They were awful. I'm never using a contractor again. I'm just going to buy ready-made. Why don't people trust contractors? Mark, let's start with you. What have you been seeing? Why don't people trust contractors?
Well, the problem is use a cliche like weakest link, but there's a low barrier to entry to say, oh, I'm a handyman, I'm an electrician. Now, you're not going to be a journeyman, you're not going to be a master electrician, but you have a lot of contractors who don't have any business representing, your field, going out and leaving jobs early, leaving messes on the floor. Ruining people's homes and never showing up or collecting payment and you hear those stories all the time. And the problem is it just takes one bad apple to ruin the whole bunch. My dad used to say, one all crap will wipe out 10 attaboys, so one mistake will wipe out 10, and that's kind of the same thing. And so I think there's a lot of just bad blood when it comes to contractors, because they know there's this opportunity to get the wool pulled over your eyes, if you will. Right. So.
Yeah. Justin, from a branding perspective, what are you seeing that causes distrust with contractors in the industry?
Perfect setup questions. That's exactly what I wanted to say, is that a lot of these companies aren't establishing brand equity, right? So be that personal brand equity with their sales team that's out there, be that with their social media channels, their messaging as a whole. What happens when you have a breakdown of brand, whether it be personal with your team members or your image, is that you find distrust. You think about companies or things you like. You don't know why you necessarily like them. Like, I don't know. I just like this, this detergent. I just like this soap. Reasonably, is there a quality difference at times? But for the most part, it's because of the brand equity that's been built. And so if you guys are building that brand equity and you're keeping that consistent with not only, what you're, sending out there with your actual marketing, but with your sales team and with the people representing your company, you're going to see a lot more trust be built with your audience and with your customers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I just want to piggyback on that, because he's spot on. And, the reality is a customer's home, if you're residential, a customer's home is a personal asset. It's emotional, and so they're very protective of kind of letting people into that space. And so having a buttoned up brand, just one that exudes professionalism, that exudes, trust, character. You're able to come in at an advantage immediately. And we'll get into some of that later, but I do think to assuage some of those fears, a good online brand and not being too pushy, spammy, like being honest as a company, it sets you up for success, frankly.
Yeah. And I think we're fighting the stereotype too of like the slimy contractor. You know, we're fighting an uphill battle in this industry where there's already kind of a level of distrust just because of the stereotype. So
Mhm.
you have to work extra hard to fight against that and be that trustworthy, like consultative partner in the process, just because of the stereotype that's out there, the negativity that's associated with contractors. Yeah. So we've talked a little bit about why people don't trust contractors. I would love to dig in on the next point in this process, which is why is it so important to build that trust? And I think Mark, like I'd love to start with you because you just mentioned that talking about residential remodeling and residential contracting work, that it's their biggest investment. It's, somebody's biggest investment is generally their home. So, can you dig in a little bit on why it is so important to build trust with a homeowner or with a customer?
For sure. Well, first you can charge more. Like, let's just spit brass tacks. I mean, look, people will pay more money for people they trust. And look, where you fall on the price spectrum determines. It's interesting. Like, I won't get too divergent, but there was a story of a used bike salesman who would take these parts, make used bikes, and sell them. And he was selling like $500 or $600. They went out of business, right? And so a new CEO took over the company, started selling them for $2,000, and they couldn't keep them in stock because the perceived value of the product, when you just same product but 3 times more expensive, there was this assumption, oh, they were crafted, they were handmade, like there was thought and attention. Just the same product, different way to see it. They were able to kind of scale their company, and you have customers at the different price points, they think differently. Someone who's genuinely interested in presenting their home, they host their kids, they host their sports parties, they host, pool parties at their house. They're way more interested. They're willing to pay more money for someone that they trust. Whereas if you're always fighting, budget shoppers who are gonna, do half the job themselves, and you're gonna come in and finish it, like, oh, we'll frame it if you caulk it. Like, that's a totally different. The price point that you come in at and the presentation will determine the customers, and different customers have different expectations. So group A might not care so much if you show up in an overall and in a button-up shirt with a brand. They just want someone who will show up and give them the cheapest price. If that's your customer, great. If you want to scale that way, there's certainly ways to do that. If you want customers who will value, crisp, clean jeans, you know what I mean? A nice hard part in your hair, you know what I mean? Like showing up with a clipboard, taking notes, like they might be willing, you will have maybe less leads, but they're going to be twice as lucrative, right? And they're going to be way more attentive. They're going to pay on time. And so that's where the way you position yourself and the price point and the brand even determines the type of customers you work with, which can pay dividends into scaling your business.
Justin, I want to take this and go back to a point that you were talking about in your introduction, which was specifically around organic search and figuring out how to attract the customer that you're actually looking for. Mark was talking about the difference between those higher ticket customers versus lower ticket customers. Can you dig in on the importance of building trust, especially if you're trying to do some of those like longer funnel strategies?
100%. So if I were to ask 99 out of 100 of you, if I ask you guys this question, 99 out of 100 of you would answer this way: what's the best kind of lead you're going to get? And you're all going to say a referral lead. So when you're online and you're looking at long-term strategy, you're referring to yourself constantly. So you have to play that game. When you're looking at organics, you have to think of yourself as, you're bigging yourself up, but you're doing this through things that build trust. You're doing this through education. You're doing this through quality. I know it's annoying, and you guys think that you can basically just find someone to produce content sometimes. But realistically, in the human brain, the quality of your content in that brain will be the quality of your product. I know that can be so annoying for somebody who just wants to put a quality roof on, but it's the truth. And when you're playing the long game on the organic search or on the organic content marketing side, we have to be thinking about the quality of our content and thinking about how we're basically referring ourselves out to the community. And so those referral leads of just taking a different type of format in the digital space.
Very interesting. I just from a perspective of being a marketing director, I have experienced exactly what you're talking about just in there. And it is very real phenomenon that's happening right now across industries. So I think let's take this on to the next step. So we've talked about why you need to build trust and, you know, how you can go about, you know, communicating that importance of trust. So how do you actually do it? What are the tactical things that you can do in order to build that trust? And I always like to put a plug in for Engage here about having a polished professional presentation when you actually do meet with the customer and you finally get that face-to-face time in the home. But let's back up the funnel and talk about how you actually build trust from the second you meet that customer online or digitally, or you're meeting them through one of these other channels that you acquire them through. I'd love to back up and figure out what that looks like from a top of funnel perspective. So Justin, can you walk us through some of the top tactical tips that you have for building trust with a customer, you know, from the second that you meet them? What does that look like?
So on our side of things, a lot of the time that comes at the ad level, right? So the initial, if we skip organic, because I think it's easier at this point to skip organic and go to ad level for this conversation. But what kind of ads are realistic? I think when you start using unrealistic expectations in ads, customer trust is already broken. And you'll see that what happens is in your comments or in your click-through rate, they're either poor comments or a poor click-through rate. That's because the offer seems to be good to be true. And we need to have realistic expectations with our ads, even if that lowers your, ups your cost per lead or lowers your conversion rate. Being realistic and having those expectations set at the top of the funnel is so important. $1,500 off a project, great way to go in. 60% off a labor, things that make sense, that don't seem unrealistic. If you guys start doing things when you put a direct cost that makes no sense to a customer, and it's going to start setting expectations, and you're going to lose trust in that process.
Very interesting. Yeah, I think that just from hearing a lot of people talk about what they're hearing from customers lately, there's a lot of general fear around economic uncertainty and around the cost of everything, and they are they're questioning a lot of the things they're seeing around cost on the internet and around cost of these projects. You're hearing horror stories about you'll have a job sold and then the price goes up after it's been sold. It's just, it's very, very scary, I think, for a customer. And Mark, I would love your perspective on that, seeing as Sinapi is really here to help create that level of transparency with the customers and help to be, I guess, more honest with customers about what exactly their project might cost to get a higher qualified lead in the door.
Well, I mean, you make a fantastic point. I mean, the reality, just take a step to, how you can build a trust through these ads, as Justin had mentioned. Speaking to the customer's questions is the number one way to get a conversion, right? You could think of every website lead, every eyeball, well, maybe not eyeball in your ad, would be a warm lead, right? Because they've opted into, well, okay, I'll check out your website. I'll click the ad. Like they've already said, okay, tell me more. So your job at that point is to say, okay, what questions do you have when you hit this landing page? And if you can answer them, right, then you can get the lead, right? And that's where I think Sinapi really shines. Is people look, whether there's horror stories or not, you don't go to a contractor's website to get a job for a big project and not have price on your mind, right? It is probably one of their biggest questions, other than, are you trustworthy, right? And then what do you cost? Like, are we playing in the same ballpark? And I think one of the things we can do is, so we talked about Angie's List, Angie, I should say, Home Advisor, Thumbtack, these guys. The problem is they're giving these generalized quotes without consulting the contractors. The contractors have to bend their services to whatever Angie says is appropriate. And then there's this juxt of, well, this is what they said, and this is what I got. And so being able to control that and say, look, we can't answer every question. but here's what we can answer. If you fit any of these categories, look, we can say this might be between $8,000 to $12,000 for this job. Interested in moving forward? And so that's kind of where the consultative approach makes sense. It's just saying, look, I know you're interested in price. I get it, right? I get it that you've been burned before. So look, take a look at our website. Here's some awesome stuff we've done. Here's our gallery. Here's our certifications, some testimonials from our clients. Want to work together? Go ahead and click here. We'll get you an instant rough estimate and we can see if this makes sense. Mm-hmm. So you set the precedent that, look, by doing things like cost ranges, if you say a hard price and you're like, we're going to send you an invoice tomorrow, yeah, you're setting yourself up for failure. But if you're saying, we get it, you're interested in price, we want you as a customer, let's see if this relationship even makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. Then, okay, you've built some trust. You said, look, you're willing to give a little bit. They're willing to give a little bit. And now your first engagement is around this estimate. Is it reasonable? Is it not? You can ask pointed questions. And then that first step is one, where you've already have this relationship. They've already given to you, you've already given to them. So now you're kind of in step 2 by the first time you talk. So
you both have made me think about as well the changes that are happening with homeowners. I mean, I think I read somewhere that almost 40% of all home buyers right now are millennials, and like 80 some odd percent of them are buying fixer-upper homes. Not because they want to, because they have to, and if I'm any indicator of what the average millennial is capable of doing, I do not fix my own house. I do not feel comfortable putting a roof on or doing anything like that. And so you think about someone who's never bought a home improvement project before. Maybe they've never talked to a contractor or a home services provider. They have absolutely no idea how much a new furnace costs. Believe me, I just found out how much a new furnace costs because I'm going to need one in the next year. And there's just a big unknown. How much would something like this cost for my house? I've never done this before. I have absolutely no clue what I'm doing. Most of my friends haven't done this. I don't really have that many people to ask. It would be so beneficial when you're trying to reach those customers who probably are not coming through your typical referral channels. They're coming through ads or digital acquisition, as Justin was saying, through that messaging. How can they get that information to become a more qualified customer? And if they're anything like me, they don't want to talk to you on the phone to get that basic information. They want to just be able to get it, figure out if they can afford you, and then make a decision if they want to talk to you further.
Can I plug Justin real quick?
Go.
This is important. And this is why it's super important to have someone like Justin in your corner when you're running ads or building a website, because being able to speak correctly to your customer is super important. Like the way we view our business, the way they view our business is often different. And so having a pro like Justin in your corner who's helping you consult on, well, what copy should we put in the ads, right? What should the image look like? Because you might think, wow, I want to put this picture. I love this picture. It's great. And Justin's like, no, trust me, we run pictures like that. What you want is a little more personality. Maybe this, maybe, we want your deal to stand out. You think you could do this promotion. He's like, look, we've seen promotions like that. We've run hundreds of campaigns, thousands of campaigns. I don't know how many you've run, Justin. It's like, let someone like him guide this process. And that's where I think, just like, I have to admit, I'm the kind of person that contractors, hate, because I'll give the job I'll try to build it first. And if I screw up, I'll call someone, because I'm pretty handy, but not handy enough sometimes. And sometimes, and I've learned that it's best just to call someone from the beginning. Just look, don't get my hands dirty. And so anyway, I just wanted to say that too, because as he's talking through this, I want to reemphasize that we can get close sometimes, but that's where like the Hard Media Group is just bananas,
Most
Appreciated.
definitely.
But one thing with that being said is like a little side note, but not to go too far into this, is you guys have to understand that OSHA is now watching the videos you're producing. So be very, very careful. If I can give you one last transparency piece, is that we are seeing this across the country, that OSHA is watching Facebook videos, Instagram videos, TikTok videos, and they're going to notify you as soon as they find a mistake that you've made in one of those videos. So be careful with your work in progress.
Ooh, that is very helpful information to know. Yeah,
this is why it's good to have a pro in your corner.
yeah. Another point within building trust is specifically speaking to fears that customers have from the time they come into the funnel all the way through, closing that sale, converting them into a customer from a lead. And I'd be interested to hear how, Justin, how do you approach this with ads, with other digital marketing? How do you address the specific fears that customers have before they even bring them up in that content?
Yeah, so what we're trying to do at all times is put our customers at ease in general, so there's not a lot of fear. And one way of doing that, it sounds a little like counterintuitive, but is that speed to lead. If you can get them in contact with someone in your office that can have a conversation with them and build that personal touch, that's one thing. Is continued speed to lead is more than just being the first one in line. It's also getting that customer to the people inside that know your brand, that represent it really, really well. So the easiest way to dissolve those fears is to have a conversation and treat that customer like the human being they are. And we try to do this with the marketing as well, right? We know that there are apprehensions when like going into these things. They're nervous about price. They're nervous about trust and quality. There's a lot of these things we can do, but if we have a strategic marketing plan in place and we're staying out in front of it and all of your spaces are consistent, you won't throw any red flags. And that's like one of the number one things we want to do in our scheme is just as simply as just not tipping the customer off that there could be an issue, right? And many of you guys I'm sure don't have any, but there could be things that accidentally throw a red flag that send a customer in another direction. So making sure we have everything tidied up and contacting those customers as soon as possible are ways that you can kind of remove some of the fear from that process.
Mm-hmm. And I think about it too from the sales presentation perspective, because that's where I spend all of my time talking to customers, is consistently addressing those fears through the whole process. So of course you want to have that content available either on like social, on your website. You want to make sure people can tell that you're bonded and insured up front. You want to make sure that you're showing those reviews, that everybody can get access to your reviews online, that you're putting your reviews in the right places. But you also, during the sales presentation, want to bring that up again and reassure and show your insurance certificates. Talk about how you've got them covered on that front. You can pick out a few reviews to highlight that might be similar to the project that they're discussing with you. If you did a roof in their neighborhood and you know that you have a review from that customer, why not show it to them? Show them that 5-star review of somebody who looks just like them. And that's, by carrying that level of, addressing those fears through the whole process, you're going to, again, provide more transparency. If your message is the same across the entire process, from the second they come into the funnel until the second they shake hands and close that deal and pay for their job, it's going to be a better experience for everybody all around.
100%. And just
go ahead.
Sorry to cut you off, Pam. I was going to say, in all transparency, we give a large discount to any of our customers that will use Engage. And the main reason why is that it will up our closing rate. And you guys are going to be more likely to continue working with us if your closing rate from the leads that we generate is higher. So we will give discounts because that tool is so powerful in that transparency in the sales model inside the home that it increases that, those 3 buckets. Yeah, it lowers that gap and it helps us continue that process. So
yeah. So Mark, I want to dig in a little bit about finding those reviews and being able to find your business and presenting snapshots of work. Because I know you've done a lot of research specifically around like Google Business and being out there. Can you give us some best practices on being transparent with customers through like Google Business and being able to get your work out there so that customers can get that information before they even meet with you?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think to piggyback off what Justin said too, Engage is great, because Engage is great because it's a tech platform and it presents you in a very professional way. And look, well, I say that because we've got millennials buying homes. You've got Gen Xers, Gen Z now starting to buy homes. I mean, these are very technical consumers, right? And so as the homeowners are being more and more technical in nature. They expect more and more online. They expect more and more from the people they engage with. They're going to give their business to those that present themselves in a kind of a modern way. And it's not that there's not room for that kind of traditional approach, don't get me wrong, but as Justin just said, it helps close rates. I mean, it's just the data's there. I mean, we can't argue with the numbers, and that's the same thing. Finding your work on Google. That's the dovetail here is your Google My Business page. It's a fantastic resource and a great way to kind of hack your digital marketing. You put incredible photos, right? Incredible photos. You respond to every single review, whether it's a 1-star or a 5-star. You list your services on your Google My Business page, right? You have frequently asked questions and you answer them on your Google My Business page. You have a very detailed description on who you are, what you do. And now they even have a get a quote button on Google My Business. So you can link that to any page on your website. And so a ton of people, I mean, I think there was I don't want to give a false number because this is being recorded. I just read it. It's a very significant number. I almost want to say it's over half of the searches for a lot of the local organizations are coming from Google Maps or a Google local search.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's huge. I mean, that's a local listing saying, this is who we are in your space, the work we do. And we've optimized specifically for these services. And this is where people are finding you now. So yeah, I mean, that's just a couple quick tips. I mean, don't neglect your Google business profile. It is one of your strongest tools to kind of bringing in that traffic and attracting, this demographic.
Well, from a consumer perspective, when you go to look something up, Google automatically populates near me.
Mm-hmm.
So I type in HVAC companies and it'll auto populate near me. And I think if most people are like me, they're just going to click enter and search that. And they'll just get a map from Google that shows you all the HVAC contractors near you. And that's where you start as a consumer.
And you guys are probably putting decent amounts of budget in LSA. And some of you are like, LSA is amazing. I get so many leads. It works so well. I love it. I love it. In my opinion, best leads on earth. LSA are. But if you're staying on top of what you need to do with your Google My Business, keeping your profile up to date, keeping consistent content, handling all the things that Mark just talked about, it'll be magic. Watch your LSA leads increase and the quality increase. It will happen. Google always favoritizes anyone who uses their newest and most robust parts of their platform. That's how it's always been and probably will always be with Google. So Google My Business sets the stage for your LSA leads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I like what you called out there specifically, that they do prioritize people who are using the latest and greatest on their platform. Again, as a marketing director, I feel like I'm constantly having to relearn Google because they just keep rolling out changes. And I'm like, I got certified years ago. Can I just keep what I already knew? But you can't. You have to constantly stay up to date on all the changes that they're making so that you can provide that relationship with your customers. It's such a challenge.
Absolutely.
So I think digging into, we've talked a lot about why it's important to build trust, just a few tactical tips on how you can do that. I'd love to dig in a little bit on how you can measure the results of these trust building exercises, because I feel like for a lot of contractors, this could be an esoteric topic about building trust. But what are some of the KPIs that you both would suggest that a contractor keeps an eye on to determine if these strategies are working? Mark, let's start with you. What would be some of the KPIs that you would be interested in, or some of the evidence that you think would show up from these tactical changes?
So there's a couple things, right? From an operational perspective, it's going to be harder for me to give these data points. You kind of want to look internally, know how many calls are coming in, right? How often are you closing? Finding things like your average deal size is and tracking that, at least month to month, is a big win, right? And then tracking that toward, when you started doing your various types of marketing, or if you did something creative. You threw a billboard up. How did that change things like average deal size? Because
Mhm.
being booked out 3 to 6 months is not necessarily a good thing. Raise your prices 20%, cut off 20% of your customers, and then go like lean into that new demographic. I mean, if you're booked out 6 months, I mean, there's see what I'm saying? So I do think there is a way to internally take a hard look at how's your, and even just talk to your salespeople. Are you enjoying your job? Do you look forward to coming to work? What's it like making calls? What's it like going to people's houses? Do you find that people are prepared and receptive? Having these conversations, data is great, numbers are great, but sometimes just talking to your employees and having honest conversations, what do you see out there, is one of the best ways to know how your business is being perceived, how the estimates are being perceived. If they feel like they're being efficient, which is a good one, because sometimes numbers can't show you that. They can say, I just feel like I'm driving all over the place and no one's closing, or I'm always working, I never have enough time. And you can adjust from there.
Mm-hmm.
From a marketing perspective, I will say V1, just find out how many people visit your website a month. Like, go do that. Like, everyone, you should just know, like, that should be those are all not warm. It's not technically a warm lead, but it's kind of a warm lead. Like, those are people interested.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's only 100. I only get 60 to 100 a month. And how many of those have converted? Like, that's free traffic. Those are people engaging with you, and they didn't have a reason to call you, or, so that would be, I would say, just a high level, like, for sure, interview your employees, get some data there, and then check your web visitors and your Google My Business traffic. Like, those three should get you a pretty good understanding of,
Yeah, I think employee sentiment is something we often forget about as a metric to track. How happy is your sales team? Because if your sales team is getting nothing but like crap leads, or, leads that don't have a commission rate that's high enough to really, keep them paid, that's a problem for your business. And like, you want to retain your top sales reps, and you're not going to do that if they're not getting the kinds of leads that they need in order to pay their bills. So I think that's a really good call out to gauge employee sentiment. I think in addition to that too, is looking at like close loss reasons. So tracking, why aren't you closing deals? It's just as important as tracking why you are. So is it that they don't have the correct expectations about pricing before they get into the sales appointment? If that's the case, you may want to look into some transparency tools around pricing. If it's consistently that you're not offering the services they're looking at, like maybe you need to invest in a better website or better marketing materials up front. So that's a really good call out, Mark. I didn't even think about employee sentiment as a KPI to measure here. Justin, can you dig into just some of the metrics that you if you were a contractor, you were a business owner, what would you be tracking related to some of these marketing transparency tips and tricks we've brought out?
Yeah, I live and die by metrics. I'm a metrics geek. So
we love a spreadsheet. We love a dashboard.
I love it. Yeah. So I think you guys should all have a dashboard that you can access at any time, and it needs to be in live time. I don't care who you're using. If you're keeping it internal, there's platforms you can be using and you can integrate with. You guys need to be tracking your cost per lead, your cost per acquisition, and your cost per appointment set. Those are three of the most important. And then your budget funneling. Where is your budget going, and how fast can it be shifted? So with that being said, seasonality is so important. Some marketing companies will lie to you and tell you that seasonality doesn't matter. I'm going to be very transparent. It does. There's only a few places in the country where it does not. But even in Florida, there's the times when you put on roofs and times when you don't, right? Even though it's warm down there. Yeah, hurricanes, or when it's like 103 degrees, you're probably not going to put a lot of roofs on. So
it's a little hot up there. Yeah.
Seasonality matters. And why that matters is that when you're in off season, that budget needs to be going into Google. And when you're on season, your budget really needs to be going onto social. Now, there are variances in that, but there's a reason for that. And that's because people think about like, oh, that's a pretty roof. The aesthetic of my home, things going on in season, those trigger, right? When someone's looking for a roof in the winter, like, I'm in Ohio, so I'll use my seasonality. When it's January in Ohio, the only person looking for a roof is somebody who has a problem and they need it fixed now. Yeah. So they're going to go Google a solution. So we're going to see better budgets on better platforms. So keeping those metrics, and then I would almost break those up into seasonality. View your metrics in season, view your metrics out of season, and then declare budgets and strategies for both of those, because unless you're like in Los Angeles or a few other places, it's going to matter.
Well, I mean, it also gets to be like 120 degrees in LA now. So I feel like there's still, there's some seasonality there too. Nobody wants
That's
to
true.
be having their shoes melt while they're on a roof and getting stuck to it. Yeah, I'm in Chicago, Justin. So I definitely feel deeply that you're not putting a roof on in February unless you have to.
Exactly.
That's a need to have, not a nice to have at that point. So yes, definitely see your budget going to different places. Well, I think that's all the time that we have for our content today. Wanted to see if we have any specific questions that have come in. Morgan is on our chat to take care of those. So if you have a question, please feel free to drop that into the chat for us. In the meantime, I'm going to put up some contact information. So if you would like to get in touch with any of our crew here, please reach out through one of these channels. Engage is running a special offer for any of our Synappy and Hard Media friends who decide to come take a demo with us. If you sign a new contract before December 15th, we will give you 20% off your licenses for that first year, because we, again, love our Synappy and Hard Media friends. They come to us with great marketing collateral from Justin's team and a real transparent attitude from Mark's company. So it makes our job really easy. Let's see, Morgan, do we have any questions that have come on in? Let's see.
We do not have any questions right now. So if you do have a question, please put it in the chat so we can answer.
Great. And in the meantime, I think that there's a question I always like to ask before I wrap up a webinar, especially when I have experts on the line on a topic. Justin, specifically around all of these changes that have happened, I'm feeling the Apple changes that you mentioned at the top of the call deeply. The fact that I can't see cross-site tracking or open rates anymore is driving me nuts. What's like one change that's happened in the industry over the last few months that you think everybody needs to be paying attention to?
So this is something we've never felt. I might as well bring it up because we're in that season. Election season this year was unbelievable, and something we're going to have to track throughout the history of digital moving forward. We saw ad space go crazy. We were unable to reach enough to spend a budget. And if we were spending budget, our cost per lead was through the roof. So I think that's one thing that you guys have to be monitoring moving forward, or any seasonality. I think we're going to be seeing that as these platforms become the main way of communication and sales and marketing. We are going to see spikes at different times. We're going to see that with Black Friday, I think, is going to be another one. But this election season we just came out of was by far the craziest disruption we've ever seen. So staying on top of current events when you guys are running campaigns, especially some of you I know that are running $20,000, $30,000 a month budgets, you could waste an exuberant amount of money just because something like this happened when you should have paused your campaigns or at least lowered budgets in them. So I think that is one of the things I think you guys should be keeping an eye on that's a little bit different than what you're probably hearing on a consistent basis.
I didn't even think of that. That is a really good call out. Mark, same question. What is one thing you've noticed in the industry over the last 3 to 6 months that you think is really important and is going to kind of change the way we do things going forward?
To your point, it's called first party data. It's basically somebody giving you their information as opposed to you being able to fish it out of their browser or their computer. That was the way we've always been doing it, right? Yes. So giving people a reason to opt into you. I was in email marketing for years, and this was, I'll tell you, I've been to conferences where you have a bunch of weeping executives. We can't take their information anymore. It's like, what are we gonna do? It's like, give them a reason to sign up. You have to give the customer an incentive to engage with you and have them give you that is the best way to build a loyal fan base now. So yeah, just working on answering your customers' questions ahead of time, and giving them a good reason to say, yeah, let's, here's my address, here's my name, here's my phone number, call me, is, in my opinion, it's going to be the future in every industry, and this one is not excluded.
Yeah, the way I think about it now is by the time a customer gets to you, to the point of wanting to book a demo for a SaaS perspective, or having that in-home sales appointment, they're filling out that form. They're looking for a reason to say yes at that point. And so we want to give them that reason to say yes, whether it's with like a piece of content, giving them an offer, something to get them to give you that information. Because yeah, the changes that have happened there have been a challenge, to say the least, to traditional strategies.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I think we're all set today here. We don't have any additional questions coming in. Justin and Mark, I appreciate your expertise and your thoughtfulness today. I learned some new information, and that's really all that I can hope for every day when I come into work, or sign into work, as it were. I'm in my house. So thank you both so much for being here. We are recording this conversation, and we'll be sending out a YouTube link to it. So for anybody who wasn't able to stay on for the whole conversation, or if you have any colleagues or friends in the industry that you'd like to share it with, it will be a YouTube link, so you can just send it out and share it far and wide. So thank you so much to everybody for being here today. And we look forward to doing a lot more great content with our friends at Hard Media and Sinapi coming up soon with Engage. Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone. Have a good one.